Welcome to Let's Talk with Dr. Robin. In this podcast, topics will be discussed that promote the daily management of life. While this information is meant to supplement your journey towards healthy emotional well-being, it is not intended to take the place of seeing a licensed mental health professional. I am Dr. Robin C. Wiley, a licensed clinical social worker with a private therapy practice in New Jersey. Thank you for joining today's conversation. Welcome to Let's Talk with Dr. Robin. I am Dr. Robin. Happy to be with you today. And I am joined by my producer extraordinaire, Bryce. Hey, Bryce.
Hey, how you doing? I like that, the producer extraordinaire. I like that.
Oh, yeah. You know, look, I got to give you your props, so to speak, because, you get our show out and running every week.
I appreciate you.
We are consistently in here. And you are also, encouraging me to take some new leaps into some different arenas and to do some different things with the show.
Right.
Which, is definitely helping us to blossom and to thrive. And so, and I'm happy to, have the people who have subscribed to us and people that are tuning in and sharing comments and that type of thing. We're so happy about that. Remember to share this with people people who might mention to you that, I'm looking for a good podcast or a good show to watch that can help me to get better,
right?
Be better.
Yep.
And encourage them to subscribe to our YouTube channel. All right. So today's episode is entitled, "It's Spring, Time for New Beginnings." And this episode is a remix from the podcast that we had on Apple. And also it is sort of, I think it's applicable pretty much every year. We did this last year around springtime. And, spring starts like the end of, I think it's like around March 21st. That's when like the official date of spring season starts.
Yeah.
Even though like the weather may not always be
springy
of spring.
Yeah.
Right.
It's confusing too, because sometimes I think it's the 21st and then some people think it's the 20th.
Okay.
I don't know, but either way, I always go with the 21st.
I always listen to the weatherman. Yeah. He informs, so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go with what he said.
Bottom line.
So, but we're in spring season. We're here. And, last week we discussed, sort of like the various elements that, that may be part of our like journey to overall wellness.
Right.
And we kind of looked at that, not just from the physical, but other areas.
Sure.
Okay.
Right.
So kind of going into piggybacking off of that topic from last week, spring is a good time for us to talk about new beginnings, talk about things that we might need to do differently. Because spring in and of itself represents new beginnings. It represents blossoms, things, we start to see, the trees budding and flowers start to come up and renewal.
Right.
It's a renewal time.
Right.
So renewal sometimes can mean not always starting something new, but maybe just kind of going back to a habit or something that was working for us that we've sort of let go.
Right. Right.
So that's what we're talking about today.
Right.
So I think, what I want the audience to sort of take away from today is that we can use spring to create new beginnings in our own lives. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that might mean starting the process to do something new that we've been wanting to accomplish. It might mean reestablishing a goal or two that we've fallen off from, like, because, we set these goals around the new year, right before, what have you. And we talked about that. We talked about that at the beginning of the year. And then by now, sometimes, we've sort of
ran out a little steam.
Our motivation is gone.
Yeah, a little bit.
Possibly, we've lost a little bit of steam. And so we're not necessarily focused on the things that we were focusing on. So this is a time to maybe reestablishing some of those commitments.
Right.
Also, it can also be an opportunity to take a chance or make a leap, or to jump towards a dream of something that we have always wanted to do. I believe everybody has dreams. Everybody has, and I don't mean like your dreams, like when you go to bed at night and you dream of something.
Yeah.
I mean like, things that you aspire to do or to be or to create.
Yeah.
There's so many people out here that are creative and that have ideas of great things to do, and something possibly holds them back.
Yeah.
I was talking to a lady yesterday, older lady.
Mm-hmm.
that's very dear to my heart. And we were talking about someone who we both know who has so many talents and so many things that they're capable of doing.
Right.
But they just haven't jumped and made that really their income source or really even like their main job or what have you. They just kind of do those things on the side. Yeah. So sometimes, we need to take that leap and do something that is in our hearts. Yeah. Right. And it can be courageous. It can be courageous. And I think, a lot of people do that. Although, we know that there are like certain things that can kind of hold us back.
Right.
From making and so when you think about doing something, even a dream or whatever, that also means making a change, some type of change. So even when we think about the journey to wellness, that may be about changes, and change can be tough for us. Change can be uncomfortable. Change can can cause some fear. And when you think about going back to, the reference of the spring season, we start to see flowers, we start to see plants. If any of us have, landscaping outside, we start to see the plants and stuff come up. And if you think about it, the plant has to break through the ground. Right. And it breaks through. So that's not comfortable. Right. Breaking through.
Painful, actually.
Yeah, it probably would be painful, a lot of discomfort, what have you. Yeah. But then you see this beautiful outcome. You see this beautiful product. You see a flower come up. You see a plant come up, what have you. And that's similar to how change is. And, and that's certainly not my original idea. That's something that, a lot of people have talked about, this idea of breaking through. And then breaking through that discomfort. And if you can get to the other side of it, you reap the benefits of the hard work and the struggle. Right. So when we think about what are some of the factors that can hold us back from making changes, the changes that we need to do to accomplish something new. First, we want to go into there is the mindset. And we have a podcast that's coming up, a show that's coming up on mindset specifically that we'll talk more about. So you can probably categorize mindset into probably 3 areas, but a positive mindset, a negative mindset, and maybe a more of an indifferent mindset where somebody's kind of like floating in between the two. So, but when you think about your mindset is a great factor here. It's because of the idea that what we think is what we experience. So how we go into something. Right. So when you think about your mindset in terms of making changes, it's, do you believe you can do this? And that you can stay the course despite any setbacks? Because when we're trying to make a change, it's inevitable that we may have some setbacks. And a setback doesn't have to be a major setback. It could be something small, but it's about being able to get back on track.
So let me ask you a question. Did you, and I'm sure you did. That's just the strategic genius of you. I'll say that.
Oh, well.
Okay. Did you,
thank you.
Did you purposely, did you start with the mind because that's the most important thing?
I think it is. I think mindset is sort of the umbrella that everything else falls
It's like
under.
the foundation, right?
Yeah,
that's why I said the strategic genius.
Yeah, because mindset, it will determine a lot. Of things.
Almost everything, right?
Yeah, it determines, success versus not. And because mindset is, you have to keep with that mindset. And if you read any of the, the books about people, people who have made it, so to speak, right. People who have accomplished anything, right. They typically will reference something about what their thoughts were, how they thought about what they were trying to do. Right. And the times where it wasn't always so easy to create that positive mindset, because it is, it can be very easy to not always think positive.
Oh, sure.
We all are like that. Yeah. We all can be.
Even the most positive person is going to be negative sometimes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's important. And I'm always concerned, to be honest with you, I'm always concerned about someone who's always positive.
Absolutely.
Because I feel like, I will say this, and I will, and again, this is from my experience, and also too, I would say even my personal opinion. I think that, we also have to be realistic. So mindset cannot just be about, so to speak, pie in the sky. There has to be a realistic viewpoint that's also presented. That's also like, you kind of have to hold both hand in hand, the positivity and being realistic about situations.
I think you have to be able to show your humanness.
Right.
Like, because I mean,
and to understand the human element around us.
right. And that, like even the most positive person, if they don't, and I mean, you see, I hate to go there. I mean, because that's like what is like a whammy of a word for us if we even different coaches.
Okay.
Right?
Coaches. We should start doing like a thing like how many times
we say
use
coaching,
right?
Right. So, but even the most positive mindset of type of coach, if he doesn't show his humanness on how he has those weak moments, then it's like you said, it's all pie in the sky.
Right. And everybody does not, we're not always going to have great days. We're not always going to wake up and be like, oh my God, the day is wonderful.
Right.
We're not always going to do that.
Right.
That's reality. That makes us human.
Right.
Like you said, Bryce, that is the human part of us.
Right.
And we have to embrace that too.
Have to. Right.
So the idea though with this is the mindset is understanding that overall, we want to try to have a positive approach if we're trying to change something because we do want to believe in ourselves.
Yeah.
But sometimes that can be tough. A lot of things factor into mindset.
I'll be honest, if I can. I mean, I think for the most part, I have a positive mindset, but I do have negative moments or negative thoughts or even flaws, right? So I might start positive and then I may go through transitions of negative.
Right.
But the key for me is to end with the positive mindset.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
And to recognize what our thoughts are, because mindset is really your thoughts. Your thoughts, accumulated, develop a mindset. And then your actions, follow that. So, but the idea is to recognize, where your mindset is. And a lot of times the mindset can determine that even our ability to even take the chance.
Sure, no, absolutely.
To take that risk, so to speak.
Absolutely.
And so that feeds into the view of self. Do you believe in yourself and your ability? So if you're trying to make a change and trying to do something different, not only do you believe you can actually do it, but do you believe in your ability to do it? Do you believe in who you are as a person? And sometimes, again, that comes from a lot of different, messages that we've received, explicit or implicit.
Right.
So the mindset is a factor. View of self is a factor. Fear can certainly be a factor. And this is another big one. And so I say, fear of failure, of course, all of us, we want to do something, we want to just achieve it. But also the fear of success. And when I think of fear of success, a lot of times with success comes great expectations.
Right.
And so sometimes we feel like, all right, if I'm successful in doing something, then how am I going to, that sets the bar pretty high. So then how am I going to continue to achieve, or what am I to do? So when I think of this, I think of when somebody like a musician makes this like amazing album and then it's like the next album comes out. Right. So the bar has already been set high. Right. And then they drop another album.
It's got to be even set higher.
Right. So then, and you got to think that that pressure is on. That pressure is on too. And many of us who are achievers, yes, because there are people that fall into this group of like achievers. We're achieving stuff. We're constantly striving to like the next thing. And it's like, sometimes we don't take the time to enjoy our successes before we go on to the next. Right. And so when I go back to that person with the album, having that great album that won all these Grammy Awards and all these awards and stuff. And then they come out with that next album and it's like the pressure is on to make this album just as wonderful. And we know that doesn't always happen.
No, it doesn't. And I think because what you're fighting now is
a lot of times yourself.
But you're also fighting that element of surprise, because maybe that first time they didn't know. So you know what I'm saying? Like
that could have been
you're being more than expected or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Or I don't know, but I do know you're right. That and in order to achieve that, you have to have that mindset. You're right though.
But when we're great, people continue to expect us to be great.
Oh,
people have a tendency to not expect you to do anything that falls short of it.
That's absolutely right.
And that's just not realistic.
That's absolutely
what I mean? Right. Even, and I don't even want to say anybody's name, but even some of the greats, they've had songs that weren't great.
That weren't great.
Right. Yeah. Or an album that may not have been the best.
Yeah, I wasn't really feeling them.
right. So that's part of it. So the thing is, think about
rest in peace, Luther. But you have some that say, well, you know what, they like, some people didn't like certain type of Luther. They like Jerry Curl Luther. They didn't like Afro Luther. You know what I'm saying? It's just, you know
I'm just gonna look at the camera. But you're right. You're right. And the other thing too is you got to think when you are looking for public opinion,
right?
Then people are not always going to agree with everything we do, everything we say, and that's reality. That's why I said, I can't imagine, when people are famous, it's got to be really tough. Because that's a lot, and you got to really think about how you view yourself without that lens of how other people see you.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times that fear can be, don't get me wrong, fear can be a good thing.
In some ways it can be.
Because fear keeps us from making some decisions that would put us into danger. So that's a good thing, right? But also fear can also debilitate us where it keeps us from doing the things that we need to do.
Absolutely.
And fear we know can be associated with worry, can be associated with increased anxiety, all of that.
Right.
But what we're looking at is the idea of the fear of failure, the fear of success. Like I said, that can also be another thing. But what I want you to kind of keep in mind is that many successful people, and I would probably venture to say most, if not all successful people, have failed several times before they've achieved what they were trying to achieve.
Yes.
So the difference is that they persevered.
Right.
They stayed the course.
Yes.
They stayed the course. They stayed on the journey. They kept trying. They did not give up on whatever their dream was, whatever they were trying to do for themselves. So this could be something small or this could be something really big.
Right.
The idea is that you just keep going.
And those individuals that do that have great, I would even say that's a positive mindset, right?
It is a positive mindset to be able to quote unquote fail.
Right.
And then say, you know what? Okay, that did not work. Let me find a different angle. Let me do something different. Let me get back on the journey. Let me get back on the track here and then continue to keep moving.
Keep moving.
So that's an important part of when we're trying to make any kind of change, because change, we know, is you don't just decide to do something different and then all of a sudden everything just works out.
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying that could never happen, but that is rare.
Right.
So something inevitably might go a little, and it's not necessarily wrong, but it just may not be the way we thought it. Because usually when we go into something, we have an idea of like, oh, this is how I think it should be.
Right.
So we have to be flexible in our thoughts. So that goes into mindset too. Mindset has to be flexible because, the inevitable is something may go wrong.
I actually think that, and you tell me if one should ascribe to this, and maybe I need to change my mindset, but I often always expect the problems to occur. Because I think that's just part of the process. There's always going to be alterations or adjustments.
Right.
I don't think anything ever goes 100% as planned.
Right. And I agree with you. I agree with you. But I think that's still a positive mindset, because the mindset is, the idea is that I'm going to be flexible. So I can be flexible in the fact that, okay, if I'm trying to go from point A to point B and something sort of, gets in my way, then all right.
I'm gonna track and adjust.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And that's a key. And that ability to adjust, that has to be something that we have to hold on to.
Absolutely.
So that is a part of mindset, definitely. And the last, well, I won't say it's the last factor, but it's another factor that I'm bringing up, is the effort that is needed. So I was doing I did a training this week for an organization on motivational using motivational interviewing and stages of change and that type of stuff. So I won't get into that yet, but usually when we're trying to change something, we go through these different stages.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so one of the things that is a factor in how we determine whether or not we want to actually change or whatever is the effort that is going to be required of us. And effort is work. That's what that is. That's work. So the effort is like the more fancier way of saying the work that you have to put in.
Right.
And so what we need to be realistic about is the work, or I should say the hard work, is typically needed. Right. But that can and will get easier.
Right.
So it can be harder in the beginning because you're trying to do something that you may not have ever done before.
Right.
Or it's just tough. So you think about somebody who's trying to, run a marathon, or their goal is to run a marathon. That's their destination, so to speak.
Right.
Then, they don't start out running, 3 miles a day, 15 miles a day, whatever. They don't start out there. They start out probably with a small amount of distance.
That's right.
And they start out like probably their speed is not that great.
Right.
They might decide they need to buy some different sneakers.
Oh, all kinds of stuff.
They might ache a little bit
All
more.
kinds of
All
stuff.
of that
Yep.
kinds of stuff that will
That's
happen.
right.
But over time,
Yep.
because you continue, so you keep up that momentum,
Right.
then it gets easier.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, this person who has never run before or whatever is now running marathons.
Right.
You know, and so that really is, you know, a good sort of way to look at anything that we're trying to do that's a change.
It almost-
Beginning is tough.
Right. It almost sounds like, and sometimes, and please forgive me, because sometimes I think I just be jumping ahead. And
No, it's okay. It's all right.
But it sounds like what you're saying is that the mindset is strategically, the positive mindset strategically builds endurance.
Right, because we get reinforced.
Right.
So even though I said, you know, mindset, and remember, we're focused less on, well, we're on mindset, but
Right.
more about the change part, because
Right.
mindset, like I said, mindset to me needs to be
Right.
a whole show on its own.
On its own, right.
But we want to make sure that, right, mindset, I think you can build up your brain, because the brain is a muscle. So you can build
Right.
up your brain power.
Right.
You can build up your capacity, your
Right.
endurance.
Right.
You can.
Right.
It just takes time.
Takes time.
And so what we have to realize is there's an element of patience here that we have to have with ourselves as we're trying to do something different, as we're trying to create or whatever it is we're trying to do.
Right.
And that the outcome, you know, is eventually we're going to get there. And we have to believe that
Right.
and not give up.
Right.
So it's important. So another thing to think about, it's important to be clear about what your goal is, about what it is you're trying to change, about what it is you want to do,
Right.
what it is you're trying to bring into your life, whether that is something that's more, not metaphorical, but just more intangible in a sense, like, oh, I'm trying to be at peace, or I'm trying to, you know, increase my happiness, or I'm trying to increase, you know, or decrease, you know, some other feelings or what have you. Or is it something that's more tangible? Oh, I'm trying to start a business. Oh, I wanted to start a podcast or what have you.
Right.
You know, remembering that, you know, what that goal is, because that's your destination. So
Right.
like, and if you think about when we plan a trip,
Mhm.
we know where we're trying to go,
Right.
but then there are steps to get there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the same thing with this.
Yeah.
There are steps to get there.
Yeah.
So the destination, being clear on what the destination is, where you're trying to go,
Mhm.
and then planning the journey. And then you need to set your intentions.
Mm.
So
That's like, is that like the course, or the purpose of why you're doing it?
so your intentions can be all of that.
Okay.
Your intentions can be all of that. I mean, you know,
you.
people talk about like, you know, what do you feel like your purpose is? People talk about different things, like depending on what you're doing, like
Right.
who's your audience, or like when I thought about, you know, with the podcast,
Right.
you know, the idea for doing a podcast came about probably over 5 years ago.
Right.
Right. Now, I
Right.
didn't start the podcast 5 years ago, and it did not originate. That wasn't my original idea.
Right.
In conversations with my clients would say, there would be things that I would say in session or what have you, and my clients would mention on more than one occasion, you should have a podcast.
Right.
I don't even think at that time I necessarily listened to podcasts, to be honest with you. And then I started listening to podcasts, and I started also realizing there are various you can find a podcast for anything.
Sure.
There are a lot of people, you know, giving out information.
Right.
And not to say, you know, from life experience, there are a lot of people,
Sure.
not to say that they're not qualified to do it,
Sure.
but there are a lot of people that aren't a therapist or what have you, and they're giving
Right.
out information. But that's where the idea came from. Now, you know, there took a lot of planning. You know, I had to deal with my own concerns, my own fears. So some of the things that I've talked about here,
Right.
about, you know, the fear of like, oh, is that really something I want to do?
Right.
How much time is that going to take? Do I have the time? So there we
Right.
talk about effort.
Right.
Mindset, am I really good? Do people really want to hear what I have to say?
Right.
You know, so there's that mindset piece of, do I believe that I can do this? Do I believe myself? The view of self, like,
Right.
yeah, I know I'm a therapist,
Right.
but you know, I'm used to being one-on-one or in group situations with people,
Right.
not for everybody to hear.
Right.
So
I'm wondering, you know what I'm wondering? I'm wondering, when you start to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to do a podcast, right?
Mhm.
Even when it first came to you, was that the beginning of the process?
I think that is the beginning of the process because it's now a thought that's in your mind. So then you're possibly writing some stuff down, like, and that was it. And I actually, sort of, ran the idea past people, that type of stuff to get opinions. And it really became, believe it or not, my clients who were like, did you get, because I talked about my intention to start a podcast. So I created that intention. And then various clients then started saying, so when is that podcast coming out? When are you going to start the podcast? When is it? You thinking about when is it? They were looking at their watch like, when is that happening? I'm ready to subscribe. What's going on? So that is, so setting your intentions, and again, intentions is another show too, but intentions are super important because they guide our behavior. And a lot of people talk about, intentional living in intention or living with intention, all that kind of stuff. And intention really connects with your mindset too. But people typically, don't set negative intentions. They usually set positive intentions. So that's where that kind of, it sort of plays a trick on the mind in a sense, because if I'm saying I intend to do such and such, or this is what my plan is, then my mind, it's almost like your mind and body connect. It's like, okay, well, then your actions and how you move and how you operate are going to fall in line with that. Yeah.
It's almost like a GPS. Like
in a sense, it's a guide. It is. It's a guide. Yeah. And so intentions, when people say like, well, what is that? How do you do it? Well, it could be your self-talk. It usually is a part of your self-talk. It could be you writing it down. It could be you telling other people like, this is what I am going to do. This is what I want to do. This is, and intentions are stated in the positive. So you keep reminding yourself of what you want to do, where you want to be, and your actions will follow that self-talk. So I know I'm making it sound really, really easy. However, even when you have those times where things may seem like they're not going in your direction, or there's like, there's a snag in the plan or what have you, your intentions, because you know where you're going, where you want to get to, will bring you back to, okay, you know what? That's okay, because this is what happened. So let me find another way around it. Or I need to talk to somebody, or I need to do this, or I need to go back to the drawing board and create a different plan or what have you. So that is what helps us. So intentions to me are key with making any kind of change, because it's almost like you have to know where you're going to know if you're going in the right direction to get there. And so sometimes our goals and our behavior, they don't align. They aren't necessarily connected. And so that's something we need to take a look at. So as we wrap up, I think, I hope this was helpful today, but I want you to keep this in mind. The journey towards any change won't always be easy. It won't. That's just change. That's how it is. Think about that flower growing up through the dirt. Not going to be easy. But if you keep focused on the destination, it's almost like eyes on the prize, believing you can get there, no matter how long it takes, because sometimes it may seem like it takes a while, but think about those people because once you reach success, you're there. You just got to maintain it. Whole other thing. But no matter how long it takes, think about that it will be worth it, and just stay the course. So that's our episode for today. Until next time, be well, be great, be you.